Good evening, everyone. Hi, my name is Lisa Marshall. I'm the Director of Organizing and Advocacy at New Yorkers for Clean Power, and I'm here tonight representing the Renewable Heat Now campaign. We're happy to have you on our Power Hour tonight, our monthly grassroots meeting. It's been a very busy month, and we are all very much looking forward to uh, taking a little break starting hopefully next week. But before we do, we have so much to catch up on with all of you. So thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. So next slide, please, Lorenzo. Okay, our agenda tonight, a little bit about the Renewable Heat Now campaign, and welcome very much if you're here for the first time, or if you've been with us for many years. Renewable Heat Now just celebrated, I think, our 8th or 9th year. I always get confused of advocacy for cleaner heat across New York State. And we will then report on the status of our big campaign this year, the 100-foot rule, which is the one of the pillars of the New York Heat Act. And we'll see where we're at with that. We're going to recap what we've been doing since the last Power Hour to get the 100-foot rule passed, and debrief our wonderful mobilization that we had last week in Albany, for those of you who maybe couldn't be there with us. Then we're going to start to think about next year. It's a little late, but we've been thinking about it, and we're going to share with you some of our ideas. We're going to talk a little bit about what we see as the political landscape, and then how the political landscape will shape Renewable Heat Now's advocacy in 2026. And we're going to have a little mini teach-in from Jessica Agelet at Agree about the Public Service Commission and how we might forward and continue the advocacy around the goals of the New York Heat Act in a different way. And then we'll take action together and share about upcoming events, etc. So next slide, please, Lorenzo. So Renewable Heat Now is a campaign to accelerate equitable building decarbonization throughout New York State. What does that mean? It means that we do a lot of teaching and advocacy around how to make all of our buildings and homes more energy efficient and get them off of fossil fuels and onto efficient electric equipment like heat pumps. And we've been working at this in multiple ways, as I said, for about 8 years now. And whether you are new to the Renewable Heat Now campaign tonight, or you've been with us this whole time, or you joined a few years ago, we welcome you. There's about 20 organizations that are active with the Renewable Heat Now campaign, and other partners that we work with as well. These range from large national organizations to tiny little grassroots groups that work in single parts of New York State and everything in between. Also, as well as business groups like NYGeo that advocate for the geothermal industry, and some policy groups that that just really work on sort of the policy and legal thought processes around how we can achieve these goals. Next slide, please. And why do we work on buildings? We work on buildings because in New York, buildings are the biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions. We burn fossil fuels in most of New York's buildings for heating and cooking and heating our hot water. And whether we're using a lot more than half of those buildings are using natural gas for those for heating, cooking, and hot water, and the rest of them are mostly using propane and oil. And those fossil fuels that we're burning in our buildings not only contribute to warming the atmosphere and worsening climate change, but they also produce really bad air quality inside our buildings that impacts people's health. And so Renewable Heat Now thinks that this is just a really great way to advocate for a better future for everybody and a better present now, because buildings that are energy efficient and have efficient electric appliances in them are not only better for our future climate and our kids and grandkids, but also better for the health, safety, and comfort of New Yorkers right now. So we're very excited to continue this advocacy to kick fossil fuels out of our buildings here in New York. Next slide, please. Okay. So most of you, I think, are familiar with our legislative advocacy. We've been working for a few years on a bill called the New York Heat Act. And the New York Heat Act was a pretty comprehensive bill to move us towards cleaner heat and lower bills, and to start transitioning New York with a good plan to transition off the gas system. But at the end of this year, the legislature passed an important piece of the New York Heat Act, which is something called the 100-foot rule. The 100-foot rule is a sort of outdated piece of legislation that says that if somebody wants to hook a building up to the natural gas system, or the fracked gas system as we call it, they don't have to pay for that expensive piece of pipe that hooks them up to a gas main. All existing gas ratepayers have to pay for it. So even if you are a family of 6 in a tiny little apartment, and not using very much gas, and some McMansion wants to hook up to the gas system, that cost of hooking them up gets added to your bill every month. Of course, not all of it. It gets distributed amongst all gas ratepayers, but that amount that we all pay, we believe to be almost $600 million a year to keep expanding the gas system at a time when we know it's time to get off of gas. So we've been working really hard to change this rule, and we passed it through the legislature this year. And since then, we've been advocating since June to get Governor Hochul to sign the bill. So I'm going to turn this over to my wonderful colleague Andra from Agree, who's going to give you an update of where we are with it and what we've been doing to keep the pressure on Governor Hochul around signing this bill into law before the end of the year. So Andra, take it away.
Thank you. So yeah, in June, when this bill passed the Assembly and the Senate, we were super excited. We celebrated, and we thought, she's probably going to sign it. And then suddenly, previous slide though, Lorenzo, and then we realized it was going to be nonstop work until the end of the year to get her to sign it, right? It's not going to be something that's going to happen automatically. So a piece of good news happened. She called up the bill on Monday, December 8th. And once she calls for the bill, there are 10 days for her to either sign it or veto it. And it's business days, including Saturdays, not including Sundays. So tomorrow is the last day. We're kind of holding our breaths. We're hopeful because the bill sponsors, Senator Krueger and Assemblymember Simon, are hopeful and have expressed in the media that they think that this is going to pass. But we're also trying to keep the pressure up by making phone calls and sending emails and doing a lot of social media posting so that this does not slip through our fingers at the last minute. So we would hope that she would sign it tonight, tomorrow night. If she doesn't sign it or veto it by tomorrow, it becomes law on Saturday because she called it up. And then if she doesn't do anything, we still get our win. And if she signs it or doesn't sign it and it becomes law that way, news reports and our bill sponsors are suggesting that the bill will be amended so that it starts a little later, and the sponsors are okay with that. We will take the win and celebrate it, even if it is delayed by a year, because it's just very important that this goes through. Next slide, please. So we have been cranking up the pressure. In late October, we started doing press events. We, from mid-October through like the first week of December, we had press conferences in Rochester and the Bronx. And I encourage you to find these on social media from the different organizations that sponsored them and share them out. Next slide, please. We had events in Westchester and Brooklyn. And next slide. And we got into the news. We had some good media hits. There was an event in Kingston that got covered in the Daily Freeman, and our friend Jen Metzger was the top line speaker there. Our bill sponsors have been very conscientious about getting word out about how important this legislation is. Our own team members with Renewable Heat Now have been getting quoted in the media as well, from anywhere from the Buffalo News to the New York Times and everywhere in between. Next slide, please. And our big mobilization in Albany that took place just 1 week ago. It seemed like we put it together so quickly, and it was so, so good. It surpassed all of our expectations. The day that we were there, people just kept pouring into the so-called war room. We were filling it up. We were staging around the surprise Christmas tree that we had forgotten that always gets placed into the center of the space. We found that the acoustics in that room are amazing. Whatever you say as a speaker at one end, everybody can hear it throughout the room. The singing, we did some parodies of Christmas carols that were written by Alex of Nyperg, and they were so much fun. Everybody really got into it. Our MC, Betta Broad, was really on fire. And we had this utility territory map. You can see some of that in the photo, where we had like as a speaker from each utility territory took the stage, that piece of the state would be held up next to them to show how this bill being signed into law would have a positive impact everywhere in New York State. And we had really amazing speakers. They were really the best ever, we thought. And that's kind of the review that we've gotten from other people who have called us or who have written to us to express how pleased they were with how the event turned out. And all those postcards that you were taking around and getting signed by your friends and your community members, we filled an entire banker's box of postcards, and there were almost 5,000 in there. It was full, it was heavy, and it was delivered to the person who was at the desk in the war room. And after that, we proceeded to go to the nearby library on Washington Avenue. We had teach-ins there, and those were also really great. And we're going to look at a few photos of the event on December 11th now. If you can give me the next slide. So just looking at all the faces, all of our speakers from the Southern Tier, from the Hudson Valley, special guest Sandra Steingraber, the box of postcards. Next slide, please. We had speaker from the Mohawk Valley, from Long Island. We had a group of students who accompanied their teacher and were amazing advocates for the 100-foot rule repeal. We had folks from RG&E territory. We had a reading of a utility customer from National Fuel territory, and we had the downstate National Grid ratepayers speaking also. Next slide, please. Okay, and now we're going to go into the political landscape and looking ahead to 2026. Take it away.
Thanks, Sandra. So we will take one last action tonight, later on the 100-foot rule. So don't drop off before we do that, because as Andra said, the governor has until tomorrow night to sign the bill. So we are all on tenterhooks here, waiting for Governor Hochul to act. But she's been busily signing some bills this week, and so we remain very optimistic. But looking ahead to 2026, we have to sort of face some real challenges politically to think about how to move our goals forward. And I'm going to do my best to sort of give you a brief presentation on what our analysis is um, of what that is. So, um, Governor Hochul is going into an election year. And so she is pretty stressed out about that. And she, as you might remember last time with Lee Zeldin as her opponent, she was not confident going into the weeks before the election that she was going to win. And I think the analysis is that she is quite worried about her supposed opponent, which will probably be Elise Stefanik. It's also the reelection year for every member of Congress. And Governor Hochul and the New York State Dems are expected to deliver enough Democratic congressmen to Congress so that to help the Democrats take back the House in DC. And you might remember that it was pressure from DC that probably derailed the congestion pricing 2 years ago that was supposed to go into effect. And then Governor Hochul delayed it. And we believe that that was because Hakeem Jeffries and the DC um, Dems or the National Dems put pressure on her to do that. So we're really thinking that because of all of this and what we've seen from this governor recently, that passing big climate things through the legislature and waiting on Hochul's support and signature are is going to be quite difficult in 2026. Next slide. Um, we have an opportunity, though, to keep moving our goals forward on energy affordability because affordability is the word of the day. And we've recently seen election wins in this off-year election with Zohran Mamdani, who ran on affordability platform, but also more conservative Dems like Mikey Sherrill and Stanberger in Virginia, who ran on affordability and including energy affordability. The difficulty is that right now the affordability narrative around energy is tipped away from the clean energy and more towards dirty energy, and we need to work really hard to change that. But we do think that there's areas where we can advocate on energy affordability and hopefully get some wins next year, and we'll talk about those a little bit. Next slide, please. But we have a real challenge with this year's budget. So New York budget deficit is projected to be pretty big, and that's because of the Trump administration's budget bill, the quote unquote big beautiful bill. They're going to be sending a lot less money to New York for things like Medicaid. And so we're really looking at a very lean year for New York, which means it's going to be harder than ever to get budget money to put towards our goals. So we are going to be asking for budget money, especially for energy affordability and energy efficiency. But and we're going to be advocating for the Sustainable Futures Fund, like the governor did last year. But we have to be really have our feet on the ground and understand that there's just less money to go around, and the governor's obviously very worried about that, as is the legislature. So this is one of the real barriers that we're going to be facing next year. Next slide. And as you all, I'm sure, are aware, Governor Hochul has really backtracked on climate, and we've seen this on the pipelines. We've seen this on the the sorry, brain. On the state energy plan, we've seen this in a lot of different areas. The backtracking on the all electric building law, that was the other one I was trying to think of. And luckily for us, she's getting some pretty negative press around this now. That wasn't happening for a while, but in the past few weeks, the press around Governor Hochul's climate agenda has been pretty bad for her. That might help us, though, because she might feel pressure from that she needs to do something for climate and affordability. And we've offered her up a beautiful way to do that with the 100-foot rule on a platter. But as far as next year, it's not clear how she's going to feel. She needs to position herself vis-a-vis climate legislation. We'll just have to see how that plays out. Right now, she probably is feeling some pressure, but whether that will continue into 2026, we'll have to see. Um, we are concerned though about she is under a lot of pressure from conservative Dems and the Republicans to roll back or change the CLCPA, our climate law. And so one of the things we're going to be thinking about next year is how to make sure to defend the climate law and not allow that to be rolled back. Next slide, please. So instead of looking to Albany, one thing we should be doing, and we will be doing next year, is looking to the cities and local areas. There are places where we can move the energy affordability and climate agenda forward in New York City with the election of Mamdani, but also in many other cities, potentially Buffalo, Syracuse. There's progressive cities like Kingston with a climate plan, and Ithaca, and so there's actually a lot of opportunity that we could look at for 2026 at the city level that where we just don't even have to take Governor Hochul into account. And so I think we're really going to be thinking about where those opportunities are and how to work at the local level in 2026. I think we have some really good opportunities. And if you were with us in Albany, you learned about one of them, the Gas Free NYC campaign. But there's other ways that we can work at the local level to move our priorities forward. And I think that's an exciting area that we could explore more. Next slide, please. Okay. And just a word about the state energy plan. So we asked you for the past year or more to get involved with the state energy plan, to submit comments on the plan, to speak at hearings about the draft plan. And just this week on Tuesday, the state energy plan was finalized and voted on. It was a unanimous vote by the State Energy Planning Board. And unfortunately, and it pains me to report this, the final plan that they voted on was worse than the draft plan that we all commented on, especially in the areas of gas transition and buildings. And really, the Hochul administration and the whole Energy Planning Board is wholeheartedly embracing something they're calling the all of the above energy plan, which we know is really code for more fossil fuels. And they were really quite clear about that. They said that they envision the gas system, for example, being pretty much the same in 2040 as it is today in 2025. They said that they envisioned us having to hire and train 2,000 more gas workers to replace gas workers that are retiring. So that's part of the landscape that means that we really have our work cut out for us, because we now have a state climate law that says we have to do one thing and a binding state energy plan that says we have to do another thing. And so we're going to be organizing in this murky middle territory going forward, to try to really advocate for the former, the climate law and the climate scoping plan, over this new state energy plan that has been put into place. And we can't go into all the details of the state energy plan for you tonight. We're still analyzing and digesting the different parts of it, but we will offer sort of a deeper dive into it and what it means at some point in the future. And I just want to say, we're so proud of all the advocacy that all of you did with us on this plan, and it's very disappointing to see this outcome. Okay, sorry, I really didn't want to tell you all that, but it's the truth. So when we're looking at the opportunities for good organizing for next year, we have a few areas of focus that we are excited about. A couple of them I already mentioned. So the first one is that we are going to advocate for the goals for energy efficiency, pre-electrification, and energy affordability money in the budget. So we're not, it's not a law we're trying to pass. We're just trying to get them to put money towards things like the Empower Plus program, the GAP Fund program, the Energy Affordability program, and some of these other very important programs that help people to weatherize their homes and afford their energy bills. Um, and so we'll be probably putting together some kind of a memo that will be asking for you to help us to get passed in the New York State budget this year. The second thing is we're going to keep pursuing the goals of the New York Heat Act, cleaner heat and lower bills, through advocacy, but instead of at the legislature, we're going to turn to the regulatory sphere at the Public Service Commission. And if none of that makes sense to you, we're going to have a little training right after I'm done speaking, right after this slide by Jessica Agelet, who's going to really talk to you about what that might look like. But I do want to say that Renewable Heat Now started doing the first few years of our campaign was much more at the Public Service Commission, and we didn't really work on legislation until 2022. So we have been doing a lot of legislative work, but we're excited to pivot back towards the regulatory sphere because there's a lot going on at the Public Service Commission where we think we can start to advance our goals there. So as I mentioned in the landscape analysis, the New York City and other local level advocacy is a third area, and then defending the CLCPA is the fourth area. And we won't be alone in this at Renewable Heat Now. We'll have all our state partners and New York Renews working on that with us, but we definitely plan to throw down. We don't exactly know what that's going to look like yet, but we're standing ready to spring into action when and if there's an attack in the legislature or by the governor on the CLCPA. So I think that's my last slide. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Agelet, Executive Director of Alliance for Green Economy, known as AGREE, who is going to do a teach-in for us on who this Public Service Commission is, what they do, and tee up what we might be doing in 2026. So take it away, Jessica.
Okay, hi everybody. Thanks so much for being here. So, as Lisa mentioned, um, the working on legislation like the New York Heat Act, which ultimately led to the bill to repeal the 100-foot rule, is not the only place we can make progress. And one of the places where activists and advocates have made a lot of progress over the last many years on decarbonizing buildings has been at the Public Service Commission. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what this body is, what it does, what can get accomplished there, just to kind of get us all ready for advocacy, in addition to the budget work and other stuff in the legislative sphere, work at the Public Service Commission. Okay, next slide. All right, so I'm gonna just start with a little quiz. And apologies to those of you who came to my teach-in. Was that last week? I think that was last week. Yes, last week. You'll probably already know the answers, but we always say reviewing material over and over again makes us remember it, right? So, okay. First question. Which of these important decisions is not made by the Public Service Commission? So I'm going to give you a minute to read these potential answers and hold in your head um, what you think the answer is. Or test your memory and see if you remember what the answer is.
right, let's go to the next slide. All right, the next question is, how many publicly elected public service commissioners are there? Are there 5, 7, 3, or 0? And the third question is, which of these victories has been accomplished by advocacy focused on the Public Service Commission? So there's a lot of great victories here. Stopping the Greenpoint liquefied natural gas facility expansion, stopping most utilities from promoting gas to their customers, ending subsidies for fossil fuel appliances, securing $1 billion per year for energy efficiency and heat pump incentives, setting the goal that utility customers shouldn't pay more than 6% of their income for energy bills. These are all true things that have happened. Which of these have been accomplished by advocacy at the PSC? Okay, I'm going to reveal the answers. Next slide. All right, so for the first question, almost all of these were important decisions that the Public Service Commission made and can make. The only one that's not is the water permit for a nuclear plant. Um, and just to differentiate what the Public Service Commission does and what it doesn't, when it comes to environmental regulations, that's the purview of the Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC. The DEC issues water permits and air permits. That is not under the authority of the Public Service Commission. For how many publicly elected public service commissioners there are 0 because our public service commissioners are not elected, they are appointed. And then for which of the victories have been accomplished by advocacy at the Public Service Commission, the answer is all of the above. All of these were done through Public Service Commission focused work. All right, next slide. So now now that I've gotten your brains turned on, I'm gonna talk to you about what the Public Service Commission does, but in order to get into that, you have to kind of understand the energy system. So I'm gonna walk through a very simplified version of how the energy system works, starting with electricity and how it gets to your house. So most electricity in New York is generated at big power plants. And these are things like nuclear plants, gas plants, oil plants, dual fuel, which burn gas or oil, hydro facilities, big wind farms, big solar farms. These are big electricity generating facilities that usually sometimes they're actually in a city and it's near where people live. And if they're burning fossil fuels, it's really bad for people's health. But most people don't live right next to a power plant. Um, and so the energy from the power plant has to get to you somehow. And the way that it gets around the state is through the transmission system. Um, High voltage power lines or transmission power lines are built to transport electricity across long distances, and these are big power lines, the kind that you would see if you're maybe driving along the highway or if you're out for a hike and you see them kind of cutting across the landscape. Those are bringing electricity across long distances at high voltages. And then when it gets closer to where people are going to use the voltage gets stepped down to a lower voltage system called the distribution system. These lines are smaller. They're the kind that you would see coming through your neighborhood. In some places, like New York City, these power lines are underground. But it's still a low voltage distribution system. They're just buried. And then it gets to your house. And some people generate electricity on on their own homes. Like me, I'm zooming in today from a home that has solar panels on the roof. So my house generates electricity. I use that electricity, but the extra that I don't need at any given time gets put onto the grid and it gets put back into the distribution system. Um, Same with community solar. These are smaller solar arrays that are kind of around in the community. Most of those also get put into the distribution system. Um, and I think the most important thing to understand about this system is that there's different owners all across this system. And that's important when it comes to understanding what the Public Service Commission does, but I'll get into that in a minute. Okay, next slide. So just similarly, I want to talk a little bit about how gas gets to your house. So it's very similar, except instead of generating electricity somewhere, um, companies extract fracked gas from the ground um, using this terribly environmentally destructive process called fracking. It gets because almost all the gas that we use in New York comes from out of the state, it comes in through these big interstate transmission pipelines. And then it gets closer to where it's going to be used, and it gets again put into these smaller distribution lines, gets to our homes and businesses for burning, for heating, hot water, cooking, etc. And then I just on this image, we put one little house there that doesn't isn't connected to the system. They're using geothermal. They're getting their heating from the ground and from the electric grid. But others that aren't connected to the system are people that use fuel oil, kerosene, etc. Okay, next slide. So why does the Public Service Commission it exist? It exists because all those power lines and pipelines are these very big, expensive infrastructure projects that use public rights of way. And you really wouldn't want multiple companies building those and competing with each other because then, you'd be wasting a lot of money, you'd be using up a lot of public space, and it would kind of be a mess. So instead, those companies that own those distribution systems for gas and electricity, they're kind of natural monopolies. We have one company that serves each area. Um, but because they provide an essential service that people need to survive and to participate in society, you really don't want to let them just set the price to whatever they want. Um, so in exchange for their monopoly status, their prices are regulated by the state. And the Public Service Commission is the state agency that regulates the companies that deliver gas and electricity to us. Next slide. And so exactly what the Public Service Commission regulates is a little bit complicated, but for simplicity's sake, that distribution system, the smaller electric system and gas pipelines, those are owned by the companies that serve us, like National Grid, Con Ed, NYSEG, RG&E. They're called distribution companies. They are the ones that are most heavily regulated by the Public Service Commission, which regulates what they can charge us for that energy and for the distribution, for paying for the distribution system itself. And the part of the system where the electricity is generated and transmitted across big power lines is also regulated by the Public Service Commission, but to a much lesser degree. And the reason for that is because in New York in the 90s, New York did something called deregulation, where they made these used to all kind of be owned by all the same companies. Used to the people that generated your power would be the ones that got it to your house. But New York made these companies split up. And so now the electricity itself is sold in a competitive market It's not a monopoly, so the prices aren't regulated by the Public Service Commission anymore. It's just the infrastructure and the cost for the infrastructure that's regulated. But the PSC still has some regulatory control over these companies, like siting, as well as if those companies want to merge or buy, one company wants to buy another, or they're breaking a company up, those kinds of things get also need to be approved by the Public Service Commission. Okay, next slide. So who are these commissioners? There are 7 of them. They are, as I said earlier, they're not elected. They are appointed by the governor and they are approved by the Senate. So the Senate takes a vote. They serve 6-year terms, and these terms are staggered. So right now we have some of our commissioners, 4 of them are from a time when we had a different governor, Governor Cuomo. So they were appointed by Governor Cuomo. The 3 on the bottom are the commissioners that were appointed by Governor Hochul. Um, they, the commissioner on the left, Rory Christian, he's the chair of the Public Service Commission. He was appointed by Governor Cuomo, but he was appointed to be the chair by Governor Hochul. And the chair has a lot of special powers. The chair is the most powerful commissioner because the chair of the commission is also the CEO of the Department of Public Service, which is the state agency that basically runs the business of the commission. It's lawyers, engineers, accountants, economists. They do all the work of regulating the utilities, and making proposals to put before the Public Service Commission. And so the chair, as the CEO of that agency, of that department, has a lot of power to set the agenda and to set the proposals. Um, okay. Next slide. Oh, one other thing about the commissioners, they cannot all be from the same party. Um, they have to have, so right now 4 are Democrats, and the rest of the commissioners are either Republicans or independents or non-affiliated. Okay, so just very quickly, how does the commission make decisions? So the commission, um, the commission decision-making process is sort of this quasi-legal process. Um, and so every decision-making process at the Public Service Commission, it's called a proceeding. And proceedings kind of follow these steps, but not every proceeding, not every decision-making process follows all of these steps, and the timing can be pretty wiggly. Um, But first, in order for the PSC to make a decision, first they have to say, we're gonna make a decision about something. So they open a proceeding. That can happen by the commissioners themselves saying, we want to take up this issue and make a decision on it. It can also happen if a utility wants to change their rates. They open the proceeding by filing a rate case. Or advocates or members of the public can open a proceeding by making a petition to the Public Service Commission requesting that they make a certain decision. So once a proceeding is open, there's a proposal. Sometimes, again, that the submission of a proposal is what opens a proceeding. But sometimes the commission will just open a proceeding and they'll order the staff of the Department of Public Service to make a proposal. Usually, anyway, eventually there's something that gets put out as a proposal, and then there's a public comment period. The public comment period can vary. It kind of depends on the type of decision that's being made and how long it takes them to make it. And then sometimes there are public hearings in different parts of the state where people can come and testify. Sometimes there are technical conferences where the staff will bring a bunch of experts or stakeholders together to have a discussion or to make presentations. Um, and then in certain kinds of proceedings, sometimes there will be a settlement process where rather than letting the commission decide all of the issues, all of the parties will get together and try to bang out an agreement and then put that agreement before the commission to decide. Certain types of proceedings have an evidentiary hearing, like a rate case where experts will testify and be cross-examined. And then after, but sometimes not. So not every proceeding has a settlement. Not all proceedings have public hearings or technical conferences, and not all of them have evidentiary hearings. But usually at some point, for the decision to be made, the commission will get together at one of their monthly meetings. They will hear a proposal before them and they will vote on it. And a majority of the commissioners have to say yes in order for it to pass. And when the commission makes a decision, that decision is written down into something called an order. And that order then becomes the policy of the state. Okay, next slide. So, just want to do a little exercise here. So you've heard about how these commissioners are not elected, they're appointed, but they're very powerful. They make decisions over a lot of parts of our energy system and a lot of things that we really care about. So I want to just hear some ideas that you all have about how we, as a community, could influence the Public Service Commission and get them to make the decisions that we would like them to make. And I guess, why don't you put some stuff in the chat? I think I can see the chat. Yes. Anyone have any ideas for how to? No ideas for influencing. Okay, submitting comments on a proceeding. Thank you. Lisa, yes. So we can submit comments on a proposal. We can organize other people to submit comments. What else? And I see there's some questions in the chat. I will get to questions momentarily. So ideas for how we can influence Public Service Commission decision making on our issues. Okay, personal tours of facilities showing preferred technology. So teaching commissioners and Department of Public Service staff about the technologies that we're promoting. Writing letters, I see here. Great idea. What else? So I see a question, does public input or public request for proceeding have any impact? Yes. I have seen petitions go into the Public Service Commission, and the commission has acted on those. Showing up and speaking at a hearing. Great way to influence the Public Service Commission. What else? So other things that folks have done, I kind of described this internal process of comments and proposals and an order. But most people don't know that when this is happening. So getting it into the media that the Public Service Commission is considering something and kind of shining a light on the issue can be a great way to build public support for a certain outcome at the commission. Okay, having peers in other states or counties advocate for our issues. So commissions kind of watch what other commissions do. So Bill's got an idea of getting the PSC to require any ratepayer funded advertising to include an approved element of the importance of reducing greenhouse gases for our health and safety. So that's an idea of something we could try to work for at the Public Service Commission. I know there are some people here who've worked on Public Service Commission proceedings, so if folks have other ideas for how we can influence them.
In the interest of time, Jessica, do you want to talk about being a party?
Sure.
Real quick, we have about 8 minutes left and we have a few more things to get to. So not too much
Okay.
to do, but
All right. So yeah, there's a few different ways that you can participate as a member of the public or as an organization. You can submit comments. Um, you can also become a party to the case, which kind of elevates your status as a commenter and gives your comments a little more weight in the record and allows you to participate. For instance, if it's a rate case or a case that has discovery, you can do discovery and ask discovery questions. You could submit expert testimony and you can engage in settlement. So a lot of us become parties at the Public Service Commission in order to really work on the inside to advocate for a certain outcome. But at the same time, that work often needs to be bolstered by um, pressure from the outside in the media, demonstrations, etc. All right, so I'm gonna, in the interest of time, I think I saw a question in the chat. So if folks have questions, throw them in the chat. I saw the question about how the PSC regulates, um, how does the PSC regulate fracking? So the Public Service Commission is not, again, the environmental regulator. So it was the Department of Environmental Conservation that banned fracking in New York. But because we bring a lot of fracked gas into New York from other states, and it moves through pipelines that are owned by entities that are regulated by the Public Service Commission. Um, the Public Service Commission regulates the spending on pipes. So, um, the 100-foot rule is a really good example, and our work on New York Heat has been about enabling the Public Service Commission to require utilities to not replace really expensive big gas pipelines with more gas pipelines, but to help people transition to heat pumps instead, for instance. Because those are utilities that are regulated by the Public Service Commission. I hope that answers your question. All right.
awesome.
I don't see any more questions in the chat. I see other great ideas in the chat, so keep on coming, and I will pass it back over to whoever is closing the meeting. I think that's you, Lisa.
That's me. And let's go to the next slide, Lorenzo. So before we do the little take action together and talk about next steps, Renewable Heat Now will be building out a campaign to work at the Public Service Commission next year to keep moving forward our goals that we've all been working on together in this campaign, to decarbonize buildings, to keep energy affordable, home energy affordable, and to make sure that the state does good planning for transitioning us off the gas system. So stay tuned for that. This primer from Jessica, and thank you so much, Jessica, it was just a beginning. We're probably going to be doing a statewide tour where we're going to bring teach-ins to your neighborhood to really get more people involved at the Public Service Commission, whether it's around a rate case or a gas planning or some other proceeding that's happening at the Public Service Commission, so that we can all learn how to do this advocacy together. But tonight we are very focused on getting the 100-foot rule signed, and we have some actions for you to do. So first, we want to share with you a little video that we made of some of the highlights of the mobilization that we had last week on December 11th, and a way for you to share this video on social media. So Lorenzo, can you show the video now, and then we'll share the toolkit.
Today, we are here at the Capitol to urge Governor Hochul to take action to lower our energy bills. Our energy bills are especially out of control. And families are paying way more than they used to for the same amount of heat.
You really start to wonder, who could really raise a family like this?
Who can raise a family in these conditions? All throughout my life, my utilities were shut off, on and off, and on and off. But the worst and longest time was when my son was 5 years old and my elderly grandfather was 70 years old, suffering with kidney failure. Our utilities were shut off in the hottest days of August, all the way through the coldest days of February. 9 months of misery, and the utility companies did not care.
My skin in the game comes from being a primary care doc. Folks can't make their bills, so they cut back on their medication when money's tight. If the 100-foot rule goes away, $600 million disappears from our bills. Governor Hochul, you have the power to make this happen.
Go ahead and pick up that little pen and do something, please.
Sign the bill. Sign the bill.
Okay, so if you liked that video, which I've watched it about 15 times today and I still like it, we made a little social media toolkit for you you can share it in different ways. If you use any social media at all, you can upload a video. We have 3 different lengths of video and onto your own account or your organizational account, and we have captions, and the important thing is to tag the governor when you do it. You could do it Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, or Instagram, or all 4. And we really encourage you to do that today because TikTok, there's no time to waste. We are about out of time here, and the governor we want her to hear from you today. So please use the toolkit, but also you can do something easier, or you can do both, which is you can find the post that Renewable Heat Now made. You can like the posts, comment on the posts, and share the posts on your social media as well. And you know how the algorithms work. For more people to see it, the more people that like it and comment on it and interact with the post, the more the algorithms pick it up and the more people get to see it. So I'm going to ask you guys to take a minute now to look into that toolkit. We are at 8 o'clock, so I don't want to go too much over, but I'd love for all of this video to go viral make sure the governor and her staff see how many people are liking and sharing it. We also have phone numbers to call, and I know that it's not been possible to get through to the governor on these phone numbers. So if you're frustrated like we are, that's why we didn't do call relays this week, because mostly we haven't been able to get through. We do have our email tool though, so that's in the chat, and you can send her another email. Even if you've already emailed her and signed a postcard, you can email again. And our last action is we know that the governor's State of the State address is going to be January 13th. And we've scheduled our next Power Hour, our January meeting for Thursday the 15th. So please sign up for that, because we'll be sort of assessing what the governor has committed to doing at that point for energy affordability in the budget, and really working on a budget plan to try to make sure that these important energy efficiency and affordability and electrification programs get funded. I will just close out but with a bit of good news. That's just today. We didn't even have time to make a slide for it, but NYSERDA held a meeting to talk about how they're going to spend what we call the RGGI money, or the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, I think it is money. That's money that is like a cap and invest program that has existed where fossil fuel companies have to pay into this fund. And we got to learn today how NYSERDA is going to spend some of that money. And they are going to be putting money back into Empower Plus. I know that some of you have helped us work on it. This very important energy efficiency program that gives grants to low-income households to weatherize. So that's been something we've been very worried about since the summer. The program was sort of suspended and has sort of been really slow now. It's really impacting the contractors and the people who get to get these grants. And it looks like going forward, we're going to have more money in that fund. The other piece of good news was, we're very devastated about the delay of the All Electric Building Act, but they announced today that they're going to be offering rebates for heat pumps for new construction. So there will be at least incentives. That plus, hopefully, fingers and toes crossed, the 100-foot rule will really help incentivize that new buildings will be all electric, even though the all electric building law is not going into effect. As we know, it did get delayed. So we do have some good news to share here at the end of the year, and hopefully we'll have more sometime in the next 48 hours. We hope to be celebrating with all of you. We're just hanging on here by a thread and waiting for the governor's signature on our bill. So the links to all these things are in the chat. As always, you can find our most important links on our link tree, which is always linked in our Instagram. And Andra, can you stick our link tree in the chat if you have it handy?
Yes, 1 second.
Our link tree is where we keep up to date. So if you think, oh, where's that link for the Renewable Heat Now call tool, email tool, the sign up for the next power hour, the fact sheet about induction cooking, the next mobilization, the next action, all of those are always up to date in our link tree. Next year, you're going to see, we're going to have an updated website soon that hopefully will look a little bit more au courant, as they say. And we have a lot of exciting things going on next year to share with you. So I will leave you all now. It's a little bit late. We went slightly over time, but thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that all of you have plans to rest and restore and take care of each other over the winter break. And we'll see you all in January. And you'll be hearing from us as soon as we get any news at all about the governor's actions on the 100-foot rule. So look for that sometime between now and tomorrow night or Saturday. All right, I'll leave you with that. Thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.